the weight your soul was never meant to carry alone. Some burdens become so heavy that your soul stops knowing how to rest. You keep smiling, you keep functioning, you keep telling people you are okay. But deep inside, something feels exhausted. Your mind is tired, your heart is overwhelmed, and the weight you have been carrying silently is starting to break you from the inside. Maybe nobody around you fully sees it, but God does. He sees the pressure hidden behind your silence. He sees the emotional exhaustion you stop trying to explain. He sees the moments where your heart feels too tired to keep carrying everything alone. And tonight, before this prayer ends, something is about to change. Because God never asked you to survive life carrying burdens that were destroying your peace. Stay here. Because the weight crushing your soul is about to meet the hands of the one strong enough to carry it for you. For a long time, you tried to carry it quietly. You convinced yourself you could handle the pressure a little longer. You told yourself things would eventually become easier if you just stayed strong enough. So you kept moving forward while your heart slowly became heavier underneath everything you were carrying. But now something inside you feels different. The exhaustion is no longer hiding the way it used to. Your soul has reached a place where the weight can no longer stay invisible. You feel it in quiet moments. You feel it when your thoughts slow down at night. You feel it in the emotional tiredness that follows you even after resting physically. There is a heaviness inside your heart that sleep alone cannot fix anymore. And perhaps the hardest part is that nobody fully sees how much you are carrying internally. People still expect you to function normally, to smile, to continue handling responsibilities, to remain emotionally stable while silently fighting battles they know nothing about. So you continue trying. But every day feels heavier than the one before. Your thoughts feel crowded. Your emotions feel exhausted. Small situations suddenly affect you deeply because internally, your heart has already been operating under pressure for far too long. And eventually the burden begins revealing itself in ways you cannot fully control anymore. You lose peace faster. You overthink constantly. You feel emotionally drained even during ordinary moments because your soul is carrying fear, pressure, worry, disappointment, and exhaustion all at the same time. This is what happens when the human heart carries too much without release. The burden slowly becomes part of everything. It follows you into conversations, into quiet moments, into your sleep, into your prayers, into the way you think about tomorrow. And little by little, surviving emotionally begins feeling harder than anyone around you realizes. Maybe tonight, this is exactly where you are, still functioning on the outside while secretly feeling crushed underneath the weight inside you. Still trying to appear strong while your soul quietly reaches the point where it can no longer pretend everything is okay. But God already saw this burden long before you reached your limit. He saw the pressure hidden behind your silence. He noticed the emotional exhaustion nobody else fully understood. He knew your heart was becoming tired even while you kept trying to hold everything together alone. Nothing you are carrying has ever been invisible to him. Throughout Scripture, God repeatedly moved toward people whose souls became weary underneath heavy burdens. David cried out from emotional exhaustion. Elijah reached moments where fear and pressure overwhelmed his strength completely. Martha became consumed internally by everything she was carrying until Jesus reminded her that her soul was overwhelmed underneath the weight. God has always understood burdened hearts, especially the ones trying to survive silently. And tonight, the weight your soul can no longer hide is about to encounter the presence of the one who never intended for you to carry all of this alone. Because what feels unbearable inside you right now is not too heavy for God to hold. And what happens next may finally begin lifting the burden that has been exhausting your soul for far too long. There comes a moment when the soul realizes it cannot keep surviving through effort alone. You tried to stay strong. You tried to keep control over your thoughts, your emotions, your fears, your responsibilities. You kept telling yourself to push through one more day, one more night, one more difficult moment. But deep inside, the burden kept growing heavier, and eventually, your heart reached a place where pretending to handle everything alone became more exhausting than the pain itself. That is where something begins changing. Not outside first, inside. Because the moment you stop fighting alone, is often the moment your soul finally becomes honest before God. You stop trying to appear emotionally unshaken. You stop forcing yourself to carry pressure silently. You stop pretending your heart still has strength for battles that have already exhausted you internally. And instead, something vulnerable rises from deep inside your soul. God, I cannot keep carrying this alone anymore. Sometimes that single sentence becomes the beginning of healing, because God never asked you to become emotionally indestructible before coming to Him. He never expected you to hold together burdens that were destroying your peace from the inside. Throughout Scripture, people encountered God most deeply when their own strength reached its limit. Peter cried out while sinking because he realized he could not save himself. David repeatedly poured out fear and emotional anguish instead of hiding behind false strength. Even Jesus in the garden before the cross openly expressed the unbearable weight pressing against his soul. God has never rejected honest weakness. He responds to it. And tonight your soul is finally reaching the moment where surrender becomes real. Not surrender to fear, surrender to God. You feel it slowly happening. The constant pressure to control everything begins loosening. Your heart no longer feels forced to survive every burden through human strength alone. The emotional tension inside your chest starts softening, because for the first time in a long time, you are no longer carrying everything by yourself. This is the turning point many people spend years avoiding. The moment where the heart finally admits, I need God more than my own strength. And strangely, this is not the moment where the soul becomes weaker. It is the moment where real strength finally begins entering. Because the burden loses power once it is placed into the hands of someone greater than you. And right now, while your heart opens honestly before God, something sacred is beginning inside you. The weight that has been consuming your peace is no longer resting only on your shoulders. God is beginning to carry what has been crushing you internally. And what happens next may completely change the way your soul experiences this burden from this night forward. The situation may not have changed immediately. The pressure around you may still exist. Certain questions may still remain unanswered tonight. But something inside your heart is no longer the same, because the moment you stopped carrying everything alone, God began stepping into the place where the burden had been crushing your soul silently for so long. And now, little by little, the weight feels different. Not gone completely, but no longer unbearable. This is how God often begins restoring exhausted hearts. Not always by removing the burden instantly, but by entering the middle of it and carrying what human strength can no longer sustain. And perhaps this is the first time in a very long time that your soul has truly felt that kind of relief. Your thoughts begin slowing down. The emotional tension inside your chest starts loosening. The fear that once controlled your mind no longer feels as powerful because now your heart realizes it is no longer standing alone underneath the pressure. God is here, not distant from your pain, inside it with you. That changes everything, because burdens become heavier when the soul believes it must survive them alone. Fear becomes louder when the heart feels abandoned. Emotional exhaustion becomes overwhelming when the mind believes every outcome depends entirely on human strength. But tonight something sacred happened. You released the burden before God. And once that happened, peace slowly began entering the exact places where pressure had been destroying your emotional strength from the inside. This is the peace Scripture describes as rest for the weary soul. Not because life suddenly becomes easy, but because God's presence becomes stronger than the burden itself. Tonight, while nobody else fully saw the battle happening inside you, God saw every moment of it. Every fearful thought, every silent breakdown, every exhausted prayer, every moment where your soul felt too overwhelmed to continue carrying everything alone. None of it was invisible to Him, and the same God who carried weary hearts throughout Scripture is carrying yours now. When Moses felt crushed underneath impossible responsibility, God sustained him. When David cried from emotional anguish, God remained near to the brokenhearted. When weary people came to Jesus carrying heavy burdens, He did not reject them for being exhausted. He invited them closer, because God has always been the refuge of souls that can no longer survive through their own strength alone. And tonight your soul encountered that refuge personally. The burden that was breaking you internally no longer owns your peace the same way. The pressure that consumed your thoughts is beginning losing strength. The emotional exhaustion that followed you everywhere is finally meeting the presence capable of restoring what pain drained inside you for far too long. And maybe this is what your heart needed more than anything tonight. Not perfect answers, not instant solutions. The reassurance that you no longer have to survive this burden by yourself. Because now God is carrying what was once destroying you from the inside. And for the first time in a long time, your soul can finally begin resting again.